can. Oh, this guy.
You give me the signal when we're ready. All right, 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and call to order our Riverdale City Council meeting for Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. Let the records show that all members of the City Council are present, as well as members of the city staff and members of the public. We have asked Mr. Brandon Cooper to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I have asked Councilor Richter if he would give our invocation.
Our eternal Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to gather together this evening to discuss the needs of the city and its citizens and ways in which we might help improve the lives of all those who live here and visit here. Grateful for these opportunities and for all those who spend so much time and effort to help make these things possible. We ask a special blessing to be upon all those in attendance, that they might be able to share their thoughts and feelings freely. So we're so grateful for the staff and especially our first responders who work so hard and diligent to keep us all safe. Please continue to bless them, watch over them and their families. We ask a blessing to be upon us, that thy spirit might be with us, that we might be prompted to do those things that will help improve the lives of the citizens and visitors to this great city. We're grateful for all that thou does for us and ask for thy continued blessings, and do so in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilor Richter. We now have a time for public comment. This is an opportunity to address the City Council with any concerns or ideas you may have. No action will be taken during the public comment period. Please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please state your name and the city you reside in when you approach the microphone. Come on up to the microphone. This is so the folks online can hear us and
Good evening. Thank you for letting me take this time. My name is Dale Trossel, longtime resident of Riverdale. Was wondering if we could do a better job communicating. That's the people that run our city and the citizens. I've been in a couple of situations where I get one answer one day, and then later a different answer comes to light. Specifically, when I changed residence in Riverdale, came in here and had my water. I thought I was just having it moved, but they says, no, it's a new account. And I said, okay. And so wanted to transfer, or I set up my garbage and was told at that time that I needed a recycling container. And I said, well, no, I've lived here since '84 and I haven't had one. And well, you need one now. And I said, okay. My son bought my old house. He came down here and he was offered the option of a recycling can. So, which is it? And I, at no point while I'm speaking am I criticizing anybody, because there's a lot that we have to know and a lot we have to work with. I myself, I trust you guys. I trust the city. But, when I start to get, two different answers, what gives? Another instance is I'm part of the HOA that owns the property the wetlands are on. And we've been told that basically they're just nice to look at. And then I noticed in the newsletter that with the new project, you address the wetland situation, Mayor, and that it was fine for those people to clear cut that. So one story is that we can clear cut it for something. The other story is we can't even go in and trim dead foliage. And when that was set up, that may have been a great idea, but those saplings are now very tall. And as far as clearing the dead stuff, if it's not separated from the tree, we can't cut that either. It has to physically separate from the tree and then just more like a pickup. And I'm sure that, probably other people have been told one thing and seen another thing happen. So I sure don't have any answers, and I was always taught, don't bring me a problem unless you have an answer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's good to put a face with you, Mr. Trossel. I have a couple of letters, I think, handwritten letters from you, or physical letters. So
Yes.
Thank you for coming in and speaking to us tonight.
My name is Kathy Bison from Riverdale City. I live in Shady Grove Homeowners Association, Shady Grove 2 and 3. One of our issues that we had, I talked to Mr. Cooper out here, and we got an answer on that. So one of the other issues that we have concerns about is our fire hydrants, and I think you're aware of this, Mr. Mayor. We've been told that from 1997-98, when our community was built, that the fire department has been checking our fire hydrants during that time until maybe 5 or 6 years ago when that quit, because apparently it became a private property issue and a liability issue that the fire department weren't allowed to come in there and check them anymore. We're trying to get an answer on that as to why. We realize it's a homeowners association. The hydrants are on an easement that Riverdale City shares with us. My property and all of the homeowners in my community are private property. Shady Grove doesn't own the property that my home is on. I am completely responsible for my property. It's just the roads coming in and around. I feel like we pay full taxes, full property taxes, to receive all the same amenities that all other homeowners outside our community get. And I almost feel like sometimes we're treated like second-class citizens because we're in a homeowners association. And it's frustrating to try to get the answers, but people, when you do a job, you learn your tools. You learn, if you're an officer, you learn to handle your weapon. You learn how to handle and drive your car. If you're with the fire department, you learn how to take care of your truck and how to do all of the tools, and that includes the hydrant. When a fire truck comes into my community, I want them to be aware of where the hydrants are, how they operate, and if they're operating, and be familiar with their tools. It's part of that job. And I would like to see Riverdale City look at our community and say, yes, we pay the taxes we deserve to have as good of fire protection as others. There's also the issue of the wetlands around us, which are fire hazards. And those fire hydrants in our community are going to be part of fighting a fire in there if, God forbid, one ever happens. So I think it's to Riverdale's benefit and to everybody's if those fire hydrants are included in the same checks that all the other private homeowners everywhere else get for the fire hydrants. So I'd like to get some clarification at some point as soon as we can, because if the answer is no, we're not going to get that, then my community really needs to make the decision to hire a private company to come in and do the flow checks and the annual checks that are necessary. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks, do you want to address that at all?
I
We don't usually address things a lot, but he might have a couple of pieces of information that might help us.
I can address that. The mayor had asked me to look at this. I had even drafted up a contract thinking we could go that route. And then when we got looking at it, it's specific in our code that it prohibits us from taking over those fire hydrants. So without a change in the code, we can't even do it. We couldn't even do a contract. And I can give you a little bit of background. We did those initially a few years ago on homeowners associations. We still went in and took care of the fire hydrants. And then there were a couple of occurrences where our guys went in there and tested them, and then they came back and said, you broke these, you need to pay for them. And I think that's when the city council passed that ordinance saying we're not going to do that anymore because they're not our responsibility. I was still concerned about it, and Mr. Flagg was supposed to come down and talk to you. If he didn't, I apologize for that. He talked to somebody, but I'm not sure who it was. Okay, yeah, he said he was going down. I still want to get a program up where we know those things are working and not working, and we've been neglectful in that, but that's in the process as well. One of the dilemmas is we lost our fire chief. We got an acting fire chief, and it got stuck right in that time period. And so that's all in the works, but as far as us taking over those fire hydrants, it's not going to happen unless the code changes. We can't.
Something to think about is if our community were to have a waiver of liability, would that be something that you would consider so that if you came in, if the fire hydrant did break, we would pay for it?
Well, and those were my thoughts in that contract, but these are the people you need to talk to on that, because the code is what it is, and at some point in time there was a council that didn't want to do that, and so I've got to follow what the code says, and that's what I'd passed on to Mr. Flagg, and he even had copies of that code section. But I'm more than happy to talk to you about it and explain it as best I can, but until they change that code section, we can't do it. So.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does
Councilor Hanson.
the city own and maintain the water lines and the water meters in the subdivision, and it's just the fire hydrants that are excluded?
I think we're just responsible for up to where it enters the HOA. At that point, everything is theirs.
So, and I think we're using the wrong terminology with the HOA. It's actually the PRUD, right?
Right. It's a PRUD, but
Being
it's
a PRUD, it's a planned residential urban development, which the person who developed this said, look, you give us this, we're going to build this. You don't have to worry about any of this, and that's how it went through. And so by coming in now and saying, hey, we want to change all of what was said before is how that works, which I have no problem, getting the homeowners association to release the liability, because our fire department is the one that checks every other fire hydrant, and there's really, I would like to see them go in there and check those, and if there's a liability issue, they can have the waiver, I think.
Do we have a master meter where the water enters the subdivision that disconnects it from our water system?
I don't know, Annie.
Okay.
I would guess that's the case, but I couldn't swear to it.
I'd be okay with what Councilor Arnold said if that was a request to put it on the agenda for a discussion, and maybe we can have Public Works here to answer our questions. And
I would think they would you all have your own separate water meters, right?
It's in there.
Yes.
So, it's just, we'd have to, because we don't have PRUDs anymore, do we?
We do.
We could.
We do, so
yeah.
that came out, because there was a moratorium on them for a while. So if they're back spun up, we need to look at them all in the city.
I think that council at that time just drew a line in the sand and said, no streets, no sewer, no garbage, no nothing. It's theirs and you take care of it, kind of thing. But there's some things that are concerning, and that being one of them, the hydrants. I got to make sure that, because if my guys show up there to fight a fire and they don't have any water, that's a big issue for us, and we need to know that in advance. And that's why I wanted to get that at least on a chart, so that they could show us if we were going to continue under the path that we're going. They got to be able to show us that those were working, because they got to know where to draw lines from if they're not working. We can't be worrying about that when we get out there. So.
Can we put that on an upcoming agenda sometime? And
review the code and get some more information on it.
yeah, and a list of all PRUDs that is everybody else that's
That it
affected by
applies to,
this.
yeah.
Mayor, may I add to this? So there's some implications in the process in which we use to review subdivisions or projects like this. And Councilor Hanson, your comment is correct. So everyone's saying the same thing. So let me see if I can bring it together. When a plan comes in for a PRUD is a requested.
Put your mic down.
No, not his,
This one. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. You can see it.
Mic right through his-
Is generally a requested type of a option for developers because it does provide some benefits. But in most cases, the utilities, the streets, the sidewalks, the curb and gutter, and the underlying utilities in the street are private. And so the physical connection to our city main happens at a valve that can be operated, right? And so everything beyond that is privatized, owned and operated by the homeowners association. And so if we change all of that to avoid essentially what we're saying is to privatize public utilities, then there's lots of implications to that going forward. But I think you're correct in what you're saying. Looking backwards and trying to undo a previously privatized system would essentially fly in the face of the original approvals in the first place.
Well, and I've seen a lot of issues with that, having worked for South Jordan and the number of those PRUDs we put in. The whole purpose was because they didn't want to comply with standards.
That's right.
And it did cause a lot of issues for us in public works when we would go out to repair and work on the systems because it didn't meet our standards and we couldn't repair it. So I can see that there could be some concerns on the city side there. I think maybe we need to do a little bit more research on the liability of us saying that we're not going to work on fire hydrants. That's kind of a step further than what I've ever heard before, but it'll be good to have it on the agenda and we can all take a look at it.
And just for a little background, I was at the police barbecue, and the HOA vice president just got a hold of me and said, hey, they used to check these, and then they haven't for a while. And so it's kind of been an ongoing thing with Mr. Brooks. And we thought maybe we could just have our fire department check them and then charge the HOA or something. I think what it comes down to is we want to make sure that there's water. That's the scariest thing. I have a vague recollection that we had some PRUDs come in and they did some kind of shoddy workmanship on some of the stuff, and I thought we changed the law so that they had to do it to our code, and then they dedicated everything to us after. Now this is newer code, maybe not the Shady Grove ones, but everything had to be dedicated to us, but it had to be built to our standards and inspected. But you'll get to do some research on that. So either way, I think we'll discuss it and see. It seems like we could come up with some sort of a waiver for these folks so that we can at least go turn those on. If they break, then they got to pay for them. But we don't.
And Sean,
Councilor Stevens.
it was a PRUD in my neighborhood where a few years ago it broke and it was being checked and they were the HOA was they didn't know how to deal with it and quite frankly, the police chief at the time, or whoever I was before I was on the council, but it was like the fire department couldn't
I knew that was still in there somewhere.
do it for them, but they kind of put them in touch with people and got them taken, and kind of facilitated a little bit to help them get that replaced. But, and then it was right after that where the councils, whoever was on the council at that time, put a stop to that because they were, I think there was a threat of maybe some litigation. I know there was a threat, but whether they actually did it or not. But anyway, there was a lot of concerns there. Anyway, and so I heard about it from my neighbors in the PRUD.
And just one clarification so that these folks understand. When a developer brings a PRUD plan into the city, we give them certain benefits. Let them build maybe a zero lot line so there's no setbacks. Let them build more homes in an area than maybe would be allowed normally. And we give them a lot of benefits. And part of that to them is they take care of all the roads and the pipes and stuff like that. And so, like Mr. Cooper said, if we were to go back on those words and then give you the same benefits that everybody else had, unfortunately it's part of the developer that does that. And if you come in after, you get the consequences of that, unfortunately. But yeah, it's not a perfect system, but we'll see if we can come up with something. And you're still Riverdale residents, and we still care about you, and we want you to feel like you're taken care of.
We're proud to be Riverdale
Sure.
residents, and we want to be part of this city. And
Yeah.
we want to be, we want to have a relationship with everybody here.
Yeah. And we don't want you to feel like you don't.
Marjorie, are
necessarily.
you in the same PRUD? Yes. You're in the same, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. That's a lot of discussion for something we don't usually discuss things on. So anyway, any other public comments?
Jim Packard, Riverdale resident. On the agenda, it says concerns and ideas. One concern that I'd like to express that I've heard from other Riverdale residents, and the request is for communication. It seems like we have a lot of power outages in Riverdale. I'm not a Facebook person, so I don't know whether this has been addressed before. I think my question is whether we can get any sort of an answer in a newsletter or on the Facebook page as to whether these are just freak occurrences and the fact that we get them a lot, or if there's some sort of underlying infrastructure that's causing the large amount of power outages in Riverdale. So again, communication, as was mentioned before. The other is an idea, and this is one I've raised before, and to the space, the green space to the northeast or northwest of the building here, we brought up an idea of a small disc golf course, one that has minimal throws, safely built. It was brought up before. I think it's good use of that space. I think more than anything, I'm interested in maximizing the green space we have. If it's not a small disc course with minimal costs, then I'd be interested in hearing from the city at some point how we could make better use of that green space. Thank you.
I could just, if he wants to get a hold of me, I can give him an update on the power company's new policy. And that is part of the reason why we're having these outages, and it is not going to change. It's just going to keep getting worse. They've adopted a completely different policy than what they've done in the past. So just get used to it. It's going to be common occurrences. If there's anything even nearby one of their lines, they're shutting it down. Any accidents, any fires, any of that kind of stuff. Before they tried to work around those, now they're not anymore. It falls back to some lawsuits that they've run into in wildfires up in Oregon, and it's costing them billions of dollars, and so they've been forced into this policy to try and avoid all that. So it's not us, basically, it's them. But a brand new policy, we heard about it about, I don't know, what was that, 2 or 3 months ago, that they laid this on us. We had no idea. It was a complete surprise. Just
Put out in the newsletter by chance.
Yeah.
the only reason I'm a little bit uneasy about it is they just passed that on to us verbally. I don't have that in writing, but they did tell us, though it was our representative that we meet with. We were in there on another meeting, and this discussion came up. But just call me, and I'll explain it further, and I can help you out with that one.
Counselor Stevens. Yeah.
I'll be real quick. In my subdivision, which was put in 78 through 82, everything was in the ground. And in the last 7-8 years, I've had my front yard dug up twice, where the power went out, and it links. It's kind of like a daisy chain. It goes down my cul-de-sac and then through somebody's backyard into the next cul-de-sac and on and on. And the other night, it went out and drove around the neighborhood to see what lights were on and off, and it was the Burton subdivision. And basically, when they come out, now it happened to be my next door neighbor, and he had a section of his driveway pulled up because they have this really cool truck that has this, liquefies the dirt, and then it sucks it out, and it leaves this great hole about 3.5-4 feet deep, and then the workman gets down there, but they had to bring in a jackhammer and take up part of his driveway, and anyway, it's a mess. But the point of it is in talking to him, is they said, well, this line is so old, and again, part of it is they took out they shut down the whole subdivision until they could repair that, and they said there is a plan that they're going to replace the infrastructure, at least in that quadrant of the city, for electric. But that's the power company on their timeline. But we've had that happen. Like I said, I've got 2 holes in my front yard, and it's just inside of the walkway, because that's where the easement is for the utilities. But by their admission, it's old, and so it will go out. And when it goes out, they shut down the whole area. And there's not a whole lot of time to communicate, hey, there's going to be a power outage, because this is a break.
Councilor Richter.
Yeah, Mr. Brooks, if you wouldn't mind sharing any other information you have, that'd be great, because I live very close, and the same conversations have been happening in neighborhoods, so anything you have would
It's
be
going to be everywhere. It's not just
I
particular
suspect so.
neighborhoods. It's anywhere that they supply power. That's their adopted policy now. So,
So I'd be
It-
grateful, anything.
yeah.
I
don't.
do-
we
I do
we
feel
tried
like
to get a written policy that day, and I could tell he was really uneasy because they're not excited to break this news to the public. We found out it almost by accident, but that is their new policy.
We'll have to keep monitoring it too, because
Yeah.
I do get a little bit of feedback just from people outside the city that they'll watch our citizens page, and they just can't believe how much the power's out in Riverdale. So maybe we're in the middle of a transmission area where they shut it off on the way up to the mouth of the canyon. I don't know what it is, but I think it's worth. We'll all keep an eye on it because it's. I live close as well, and my teenage kids just can't believe how much our power goes out. So anyway,
Yeah, we'll see what we can get from
yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. We appreciate.
Interestingly, it feels like it's less now than it used to be.
Well,
That is true, because when we moved here 30 years ago, it was going out frequently, and then they put in the substation, which was Don Gibby's place, which is by
on the West Bench.
when the West Bench, where the Tesla is. When they put in that substation, this has just been peaceful.
Okay. Well, we do appreciate all the comments tonight. We'd love to have people come to our meeting and share their opinions with us. So thank you. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to come and share your concerns. All right. We'll now move on to presentations and reports. Mayor's report. I do not have much tonight. We did discuss the fire department open house. They did a great job last night. Had a great turnout. They had the helicopter come. They had all their things there. The kids seemed to love it. And saw a lot of people from the city there. It's always a great activity. And then one other thing, just because I drove past it today, it looks like they're starting to mark some markings on that condo or townhome development behind Chuck E. Cheese or Bed Bath & Beyond. So I guess that's kind of moving forward. And then mentioning Chuck E. Cheese, they did have their grand opening late middle of September, and that was well attended and kind of fun. And I've heard really good feedback from people since then. So hopefully they do really well. That's all I have. As far as city council assignment reports, Councilor Richter, you indicated you had something tonight.
Yeah, just briefly, been meeting, Mr. Taylor's been meeting with the youth city council frequently in preparation for the Halloween event that they're putting forward, and good participation from the youth. And matter of fact, they were getting together and decorating and painting and all of that, and looking forward to a good event again this year. So
That's on the 28th, is that right?
So
Okay. Okay. Any other city council reports? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to consent items. Number 1, consideration to approve the meeting minutes from the September 17th council work session and council meeting. Any changes or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Maragoni. The minutes were very good and thorough. Thank you. Item H, discussion items. Number 1, Panera and Riverdale Road closure discussion. Mr. Brooks and Mr. Cooper.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As we mentioned in the work session, these are just brief updates. There's not a whole lot to include in the packet, which is why I didn't include anything. But we did feel it was important for you to kind of know the progress because you see things happening. There is quite a bit of material and equipment on the site, so they are prepping for demolition. They have been waiting for final approval from UDOT. That approval was subject to them dealing with an easement in the back. If you recall, when that site plan was approved, there was, as part of it, an easement or a drive lane that was intended to connect Shake Shack, Panera, and then Starbucks to the north up to 300. And so that's finally been recorded as of last Friday. And so we think that demolition will occur in the next week. They're trying to get into Riverdale Road and get the water line that has previously served that property killed, and then the fire line and the new water line in place. That's about a 4-day period. We do expect to have that portion of Riverdale Road shut down, so it will be impactful for a few days, and that should be forthcoming here in the next week or so.
2 lanes, you think?
At least 2 lanes. So that's the update. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councilor Arnold?
Is there anything with the Shake Shack line that they wanted to do at the same time?
We've been actively working that and pursuing it, but we're just keep running into dead ends. Some of that stuff we could talk more in where we are in litigation in the closed session, but we beat it hard, but we're not getting to where we want it to be, because I just dread the thought of closing down 2 lanes on Riverdale Road twice. But that's what it's looking like at this point.
Yeah, we tried really hard to avoid that and to utilize the one contractor, the one road closure, the one permit. And with the timing of it all, it's just not working out.
Any other questions for Mr. Cooper? We will have some good news tonight, right?
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions about the Panera project? Okay. We'll move on to item number 2, upcoming code updates per state requirements.
Okay, thank you again. On the screen there is a table that lists the most recent changes to state statute that have implications at the municipal level. One is internal ADUs. That was changed in 2023 as well, and so we're caught up on that. There is some new things for design standards. We're reviewing our code to see where some of those changes need to take place, and that's essentially restricting the city to enforce design standards on residential single-family homes, which is kind of a bummer. I don't necessarily like that, but that is the state code, and so we need to show that somewhere in our code. Station area plans are a requirement, but they don't apply to us, so we're get a mulligan on that one. The water conservation in the general plan, that has been completed, so gold star for that one. Our standard road widths currently don't meet the state statute requirement, but there is a condition of that related to low impact design. And so we're doing the review to determine what in our other engineering and design standards needs to be changed for the low impact design elements to be in place, and then our standard road widths sections would comply with that. Subdivisions have been up to date, but with these recent changes, they need some additions. We're working on that as we speak. The Planning Commission set a public hearing to hear some of those changes for October 8th. And then once that gets acted on, then it will come to you for your review and action as well. And those are pretty minor, but again, required by the cities. Our plan review, this is what we already do on the plan review, 14-day review time. We're already within those timeframes, but there's nothing specific in our code that says that, and so it does need a little bit of attention there, although we are compliant in practice. Same thing with our plan reviews. We're compliant in practice. We just need to update some language. Inspections, both on the 3-day time limit and the third-party list, those are also in compliance, but just need the language revised. Private landscaping needs attention. We currently don't have anything that reflects that requirement, and the bonding just needs a few tweaks there. So just a summary of what the legislative requirements are and where we're at in our compliance. We're going to try to get all of these done that have a due date of December 31st. By that time, and the others will probably flow into next year. The ones that we're already practically doing just need a little bit of attention.
Any questions on those? I appreciate Mr. Cooper dealing with this. At the most recent League of Cities and Towns meeting, they gave us kind of a checklist for your city to make sure that you are compliant with all these things, and he jumped right on that and said, you know, he'll give us the statute citations and get us in compliance anywhere we're not. So it's good to have somebody looking out for us on that. So because those could definitely slip through the cracks. Everything the state changes every year.
And there'll
you
be
know.
more come January.
Yeah,
or
there will be.
March,
We'll
I
we'll
guess.
barely get it done, and the state will get back together in January and change everything again. So, all right, we'll move on to item number 3, Goldcrest Homes. Mr. Brooks, you taking this one?
Brandon.
Oh,
Yep,
Brandon, okay.
I'll take it. So you've seen the construction happening over the last few weeks. So they are fully permitted, they're fully bonded, they're fully inspected. So they're ready to go. They're doing actually a great job. A couple of updates there. As you know from previous discussions, Fieldstone Homes bought, I believe, 48 or 49 of the lots, and they were going to be the actual builder of the homes. It looks like Goldcrest has either sold or is in the process of selling the remaining lots to Alpine Homes, which is something that I guess is common with that team. But more importantly, we got word from the state that they have some concerns about the APZ and the approvals that were or were not granted at the time of the plan review of the subdivision way back in, I think, 2022.
Can you update us on the APZ, what that is?
Accident protection zone. That's that restriction that is placed over properties that are in the runway area. And they essentially restrict land use, and that goes back to the early 2000s or late 90s, maybe even further. It's restricted by an easement, and so the enforcement has been granted to the AG's office, the Attorney General's office, and so they reached out to us and said, "Hey, the approvals that were given at the time that you reviewed this subdivision might not be relevant or applicable, and so we want to revisit this." So they're in the process of doing that, and if it comes down to the fact that those approvals were erroneous, then it may affect the number of homes that are built on a portion of this project. The whole project's not scrapped. There's just a portion that lies in the APZ or the accident protection zone, and it could affect the number of homes there. Probably two to five.
Up to 6 is what it looks like, but we don't know for sure. They're still looking at that.
That's it.
Any questions on that?
Yeah.
Mr. Stevens.
When I first heard that this Attorney General's office was monitoring, do they have a section that watches development in these areas? I mean, because that seems kind of obscure that they would be in the weeds proactive in front of the curve like that. And
So the easement owner is the governor's office of
Right, the
economic
state of
development.
Utah.
Yep. Particularly that agency. And so I don't know if you all have heard of enforcement of those easements over the last 2 decades, but apparently they are now, and they are watching construction happening in
we
those
didn't
areas.
submit anything to them. They saw it, and
Yeah, they saw a couple of violations, not just in our city, but in South Weber as well.
Mm-hmm.
They were out for whatever reason looking around, and they raised a bunch of red flags for a couple of areas over there. Which one of those could be beneficial to us? I mean, we haven't gotten into that one yet, but the group home over there could have some issues with it as well because they fall in that.
and in the wedding reception place.
Possibly, yep. There was one in South Weber that I think they've already shut them down for same thing.
Yeah, the AG's office has been dealing directly with a few of these property owners, Goldcrest.
So the city is not they're not looking at the city to enforce that. Okay,
Right. This is them.
good.
Any other questions on that item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, Schneider's Golf Course site plan update.
Yes, thank you. We wanted to talk about this because the Schneider's Golf Course is a beloved institution in the city. And so we wanted to make sure that the process of what we've been doing with them is on the record and that you understand it so that if you have any questions posed to you, you know where we're at. And I forgive me, I don't have the dates, but a number of months ago, almost when I started, so let's say March a little bit before March of this year, the golf course had a need to expand their parking lot. There was a building adjacent to the existing parking lot. They tore it down. They expanded their parking lot. It's a separate parcel from the rest of, or the majority of the golf course. And so instead of joining that parcel into the bigger parcel of the golf course, they elected to just deal with that parcel by itself. And so it had its own requirements that stood alone outside of the remainder of the golf course. And so that brought about certain requirements that were imposed throughout the site plan review and approval process. And so you all as the city council heard those things on recommendation from the planning commission. You approved the site plan and the construction happened. Unfortunately, for various reasons that we're not quite clear on, the construction didn't happen in accordance to the site plan. And so as we are required to do by code, we enforce that. And that enforcement has brought us to a point where we're working with them on corrections. One of those corrections could be them coming back to you as a council looking for a site plan amendment, which essentially would ask you to reconcile the work that's in the field today to a new amended site plan. So I just wanted to let you, make you aware of that. We are working with the ownership there. We hope to come to a resolution that's going to be good for everybody.
Any questions on that? Councilor Richter?
How substantial was the deviation? I mean, is it significant?
In the scope of the world, no. But in the scope of the process of a legislative action in terms of a land use decision, yeah, they didn't follow the ordinance in a number of key ways.
And we always have to be super careful with that, because then it'll be somebody else saying you didn't do that with them. But that is unfortunate, and it's too bad because it's kind of a asking for forgiveness instead of permission type thing, and I don't like those kind of things.
Yeah.
But anyway, any other questions on that? All right, number 5, AFCU updates, 1500 West and the bridges.
Right. So we have a couple of updates there. 1500 West, we're being told by America First team is that they're trying to meet the October 15th paving deadline. They've made significant progress in the last number of weeks on the underground utilities, which are the things that have prevented them from finishing 1500 and the roundabout. So they're telling us that they'll likely have the full pavement section to the roundabout finished before the October 15th deadline, which means that that's the completed pavement surface, both layers, and it's permanent. They won't have the roundabout finished by October 15th, and therefore they'll just keep trucking and then pave it when it is finished, likely after the October 15th deadline, knowing that in order to meet code, they would have to tear that up next year. But they're doing that because they know, and they're hearing our message that we can't go through another winter with that temporary road in place. So they're doing their best to try to make that happen, and it will likely come at a significant cost to partially pave the roundabout to get us through the winter and then tear it out and redo it properly.
Cost to us or cost to them?
Cost to them.
It's to them, or they may even use cement, is what they were talking about, because they could do that a little bit later, but that's an even greater cost. In our last meeting with them last week, they haven't made up their mind, but we're pushing that hard, trying to get that open again.
Well, that's incredible, because I've been getting pushed really hard on it, and I've been
Yeah.
pushing you guys. I haven't really been with them, but it has been something that we wanted to get done this year. So I'll be really impressed if they make it.
Yeah, I think they hear that. And
Yeah,
are
I
doing
hope
their
so.
best. The other issue was with the bridge. As you know, there was a betterment agreement that was approved by you all between both Riverdale City and UDOT, as well as Riverdale City and America First, for the pass-through of those expenses. And we just learned recently that the projected cost, which is the number that's in those agreements, has now increased by almost what, 50%? 30%?
33, 35.
It's a lot. And so Steve's been really good about pushing back and talking to them about alternatives, but essentially, based on those agreements, all of those additional costs pass through to us and then ultimately pass through to America First. And so we're working that out with them and trying to figure out if we can A, avoid those costs in the first place, or B, reduce them by the time construction happens.
But I think we'll be okay on it. It's not going to be out of our pocket, but we'll get it done.
Yeah.
Any questions on the bridges? Okay. Number 6, Peacock Ridge purchase update. Mr. Cooper.
So this one may have a little bit more discussion. It's up to you. As of today, we received possession of Peacock Ridge. It hasn't quite settled. There's still some documents that Mayor, you need to sign, if you would, after this meeting. But for all intents and purposes, we're the proud owners of the hillside, which now connects us from the cul-de-sac all the way down to our previously owned property. So I wanted you to have that update. Part of that contract, if you recall, Mr. Hill was required to remove all of the man-made structures and all of the non-natural elements of the hillside. So anything that was built there or placed there unnaturally, he was required to remove that at his expense. And he did that. He did a good job. We'll go do our final inspection tomorrow, but we're very pleased with the effort that he put into that, and it's going to provide a much safer location for us now that we are the owners and we have to maintain this place. It won't be open and accessible to vagrants or folks that want to go cause trouble. There's really nothing up there except trees and hillside to mess with. So that brings us to the point of the discussion, and that is moving forward. There are some ideas around the use of this hillside as a basically a loop trail. The cul-de-sac provides for some parking. The hillside is in such a way that it can provide for some really unique trails. It would be a nice thing to do, say in the morning at sunset or something, or at night, or sunrise. So anyway, those are just some ideas. We're looking at grant opportunities. There's a myriad of grant opportunities that would fund the bulk of such a project. There's always grant matches and things like that that have to be considered. But it could be a really good use of the land. By owning the Peacock Ridge land, it now gives new meaning to the land that we owned previously. It makes it more valuable and more productive. And so I think that it's just an update for you to maybe start thinking about and share with us some of the visions that you might have about how to reuse that property.
And Sean's okay with the new trail system for the Riverdale Public Works?
Sean is a key contributor to the conversation, and maintenance will be certainly something to take in consideration.
That was not a yes answer. But it was a good answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that? Okay. Very good. Well, we're excited about that and to see what that develops into. All right. Number 7, the Senior Center, Weber Human Services, the county contract discussion. Mr. Brooks.
We spoke to you about this in our last meeting. That's the one that I showed you all the people that are attending our center and different things. We were asked to submit a proposal on 4 criteria, which we did. And we were, of the 3 cities that they're still looking at, we were the only one of those 3 cities that basic complied to that. We're the only one that said that we would supervise the employees. The others denied that. And when they asked us for that, they said that once we get those responses, then we will make our decision based on that criteria. After that time period, I got another, I don't remember if I had that last meeting or not, but I got another proposal from Weber Human Services that basically said, we got a new proposal, and we want to know if you all would agree to take the employees from the other cities. So meaning that Riverdale would supervise the Terraces employee and the Roy employee, but get less money for doing it. So you can imagine what my response was to that. It's like, why? I mean, it was mind-boggling and baffling to me. So I let Weber Human Services know that we wouldn't do that. We'd still do our own, but we're not going to do other cities. And the other cities were a little bit baffled too that was even a proposal. So that's the last word we got from Weber Human Services, and they were supposed to have that meeting on that Friday. And they never said anything about us making a presentation or anybody. We were told to submit this paperwork, which we did. And they had their meeting, and that's the one that the mayor sent you the recording of. In that meeting, Washington Terrace made a presentation for why their situation was unique or whatever. And again, we had no idea we could even go to that, let alone make a presentation. We were never told any of that stuff, or we'd have been there. And if you've heard this, I don't know how many of you have listened to that tape, but the discussion was of the criteria that they're looking at, the one that they dinged Riverdale on was our location, which is mind-boggling to me. Why our location would be so bad in comparison to the terraces and Roy's, I don't know. It's a subjective criteria, and that's the one thing they can nail us on, because we met everything else above and beyond. And so they had to use that when they took a neutral position, I think they said on it, but did say our location's not good. And so we have not gotten final word from them. I'm assuming that means that they're looking for a way out of this so they don't give it to Riverdale. But my thoughts, and you guys can decide what you want to do, but when you look at that map and we are covering that many people from throughout the county, all the expenses on that is being shouldered by Riverdale residents. And I don't know how fair that is or how right that is. I think if we don't get this additional money, that we've got to look at some other options, like not either limiting who's coming in there, or at least some cost increase for the non-Riverdale residents. I don't know how we should shoulder that burden when everybody else is getting county money. And in reality, we're still working on getting the terraces numbers, but I would dare to bet right now that we are getting more South Ogden residents than Washington Terrace is. And South Ogden is going to give them money, and we get nothing from them. We shoulder way more burden of other county residents than Washington Terrace does. And maybe even Roy's a little bit different because they're bigger, and it's hard to pull their numbers exact. We're crunching doing some different things on that to see if we can get a little more accurate count on that. But Roy's not fighting for it like Washington Terrace is. But even still, it's kind of like, why should we be paying for all these people and getting zero help from the county? Because if you're looking at the best interest of the seniors, which I thought that's what the whole purpose of this money was for, how can you not go at the biggest facility, the newest facility, the nicest facility, the one that offers way more programs, way more everything for these seniors than anybody else? And yet our location's bad. That's their only reasoning for not. So we throw that at you because after listening to that tape, my impressions are they're not going to consider us. Like I said, we haven't gotten word from that, but I think if that's the case, I think we've got to do some reevaluating on how we're doing this. Because realistically, if you think about that, and Cody's not here tonight, but he's crunched numbers on those lunches and just what that costs us alone, and we get that $4 donation is not even coming close to what that's costing us over there, which I'm okay with even swallowing the ones for Riverdale residents, because that's what we do. We're providing that service for them. But outside of Riverdale, that's a different story to me. And I don't know. If you guys want to keep paying for it, then we can keep paying for it as is. But I don't know if that's part of the reason why they're doing this, is they're thinking, well, Riverdale's not going to stop doing what they do. But I do think we've got to make some changes. I just think that's just wrong, just completely wrong.
Counselor Stevens.
Yeah, in the tape he talked about, or a female voice was towards the end said, well, Riverdale didn't put in a proposal, and then they clarified that it was not a request for
RFP.
an RFP. It was not an RFP, but Riverdale did not put in. And do you recall that?
Well, they corrected him and said
Yeah.
that they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Gage
I think it might
Foyer
have been
asked
Counselor
about
Harvey.
it at the
I think
end,
our
and he
Commissioner
said
Harvey
they
had
did.
asked. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
we did.
corrected him.
We did.
They just were avoiding talking about us. I
Yeah.
think very intentionally. The part that was mind-blowing was they clearly didn't have any of the numbers, because Washington Terrace shared how proud they were that they've served 350 people in 2 years.
Right.
And just in July, our numbers showed
Right.
almost 800
Right.
in 1 month. And so it doesn't make any sense at all
No.
that they wouldn't consider the reality of who we're serving and how many people we're serving. And yeah, the burden to our residents. And I really hate it. You know how I feel about the senior center and making sure we continue to make that a priority as much as we do any other service we provide. But it puts us in a really bad position. How do we look if we start turning away seniors from other communities just because the county won't assist where they should be assisting, or because whatever political situation is going on between the county and the people in Washington Terrace and South Ogden? It just doesn't make any sense. And I mean, we hate all of that. We don't want to have to say you can't come here, or you have to pay $8 for lunch when everybody else is getting it cheaper. It just, you don't want to send them away and say, well, you've got your own senior room up in Washington Terrace. Go enjoy your Meals on Wheels. You're not invited to our programs anymore. It isn't fair. And the seniors from Riverdale that volunteer so many hours, and their board who raises money every single year to help support all of that, they're not going to want to send people away that are enjoying and participating in the program. So it really puts us in a bad place, but it feels like they're operating on no information, no real information, because we couldn't share any of our own. Is there still an opportunity to reach out to the county commission and say, hey, you weren't given the numbers? What are you doing?
We're trying to track those down because I don't have apples to apples right now without those terrorist numbers. I would love to, but I don't know if we're too late. This decision was supposed to have been made a week and a half ago, and here we are with nothing. But you're right, Annie. I mean, we went from what's in the best interest of the seniors, which I thought was the purpose of the whole program, to what's political, because that's the only way you can justify this. This makes no sense at all. You can't even compare facilities, let alone numbers. I mean, and we've never been asked. I confirmed this with Rich today. Rich Taylor, have we ever been asked for our numbers? And he said no. So they don't know what our numbers are. They are making these decisions just blindly.
Who's the decision makers? Is it
Well,
the
with
county commission?
WHS, Kevin Eastman and
Board, the Weber Human
yes,
Services
there's a board, but Eastman and them are the ones that would collect all the information and pass it on to the board.
But all three county commissioners are on that board.
Right.
They're all on it.
And the money comes through the county commission to WHS. So ultimately, they're the gatekeepers, but they just hand this off to that board.
And it sounded like they were still going to put a proposal together for the board. Like it wasn't final there. They were just sharing some of the information with
Yeah.
the commission. But how much time does that mean that anybody has to intervene?
I don't know. I did the same thing as the mayor when I first heard this. I started to draft a letter, and I decided cooler heads prevail on this thing because I was pretty fired up, knowing all this. And so I thought, well, I'm going to hold off and see, kind of what the council says and what they want to do. But I think it's an embarrassment to the organization and the process, because this has just been really ridiculous from the get-go. You shut down every other facility in the county other than the one up north and the one in the center, and then you keep 3 of them in the south. For what purpose? This makes no sense at all. And if you're talking location, wouldn't the most centralized location be the best? We're right in between Roy and Terrace. And like I said, we're pulling all these people in from all over the place. How can you say that our location's bad? They're coming here. They're coming here for a reason. It might partly be the lunches, but it's also that facility over there. I mean, nobody even comes close to comparing with this. So if they go against Riverdale, I don't know how they can justify it, to be honest with you. I think it's an embarrassment to the whole process. But
Is there a plan to try to reach out and share more numbers with them? I know Rich for a while was doing those check-in things so that they knew where people were
right,
coming from.
and we have that information. So but there's no question our numbers are near the top in everything. And we can give them all that, but whether it's going to make a difference, I don't know. They don't even know. Like when I spoke with South Ogden, they weren't even sure how many people they had going, and they wouldn't because they shut their center down. They jumped on the Terrace's bandwagon towards the end, assuming that most of their people are coming to Washington Terrace, but I can tell you right now they're not. we have more numbers coming here than Washington Terrace is getting. And yet they never entered into discussions with us.
Councilor Richter.
Yeah, and I'm just going to echo everything you've said. I mean, well said. That's exactly right. And I think everybody shares the comment that very short-sighted and myopic from WHA, remarkable. But I was struck by one comment that they made, that they were going to change or perhaps redo the weighting of their evaluation and criteria to weight higher the location area. Now, while I agree the location should be a benefit for us, we are centrally located on the south side, should be positive. But to have them come in and change the criteria post, after all the submissions have been made, seems more than a little disingenuous.
I agree. And it's the only thing they can attack us on because it's so subjective. I mean, what does location mean? I mean, what are you basing it on? Our facility is not hard to get to. And people come to Riverdale for a reason, not just, I mean, it's location, location, location. That's why we are who we are, because the location is ideal, and we are in the middle of South Ogden and Roy.
And obviously, these are public funds that
Right.
we're talking about here,
Right.
right? So to have a process by which they change, it seems to me that that is, I'm trying to use the right word here, but not appropriate. And yeah, whatever recourse we might have, I think it'd be well worth our time and effort to, whether it's a letter or something stronger than that, that seems somewhat significant to me that they would do that after the fact.
Well, in some of the discussions we've been in, there's been a large demand for a Western center, senior center. They said there's lots of people that live out west that have no center. And in the letter that I wrote, I said, why don't we be a little bit forward thinking and pick a centrally located center in the southern part of the county, and then for the fourth center, maybe move towards doing something in West Haven, but we're the center of Weber County, not the Terrace,
way they counted
not
us
Roy.
against West, but then they're saying that the North Ogden and the Ogden are somehow further west than we are.
Yeah.
That did not make any sense that they met that criteria, and we didn't. There's no way they're on the other side of I-15.
Yeah.
No,
That
not
does
even close.
The whole thing just comes across as like, I know you're trying to be polite, but completely bogus and completely politically driven for whatever reason we don't know, because that's why those two cities were represented and we weren't. And that they now are changing the criteria. It's, for us to have to fight for their residents too and for the rest of the county, that shouldn't be the position that we should be in.
How many seats are up for election right now?
Just one, I think.
On the commission?
Just
I think
Harvey?
it's just Commissioner Harvey. Yeah. That's a good question. And we even had Weber Human Services come and tour our facility, believe it or not. We had them come to our facility, and we showed them the whole thing, and I don't know how they can in good conscience go to
I
the
don't
meeting
either.
and say, hey, the terrace, which is just kind of a room above the fire station, the terrace wouldn't even have the capacity to take our people. They
No.
couldn't even
They couldn't
fit the
handle our
number of
numbers.
people
No.
that go to Riverdale in their building.
And the commission came out as well. We treated them out here. They
Yeah.
they toured it.
So,
So there's no comparison on facilities either.
do we need to request a meeting with Weber Human Services? Or I'm just a little worried the ship has sailed, but I think we have to make one last ditch effort to.
Well, I think we have
sway
to put it on
something.
record because at some point in time, we're going to have to start charging people outside of our city more than what we do. And when they get upset about that, we need to say, this is why this happened. Go talk to a WHS in Weber County because it's not, we tried. We tried.
Can I make a suggestion? That recording needs to be broadcast over to the people and the seniors and to their board here so that they know what's going on and who the decision maker are. I mean, and let them spin up and say, hey, the bad guys are, it's not Riverdale, it's these folks, so that, and let them listen to that meeting because that was eye-opening.
It was incredible. And
It was shocking.
I'm more than happy to start a social media campaign or anything. I'll stir the pot because I'm really frustrated about it. And our seniors they're motivated. Like they already wrote letters. Like Kevin told them to please stop writing letters and the commission. And I just worry about the time if we have enough time. But I will.
How much is it though per year?
It's like
Well,
70,
depends anywhere from
70,000.
50 to 55 to 70,000 roughly that they would be giving us. But if you, part of the problem is that was getting diluted between Roy and Washington Terrace and us. So you got three. If you narrowed that down to one, then there's more funds available for the others that are still the standing, basically.
50 to 70 total for the three?
Yeah. Well, no, each.
79 each. Like,
Right.
if they go to 3, it's like 79,000 each, which is, yeah, exactly. It's,
I mean, it
enough
covers
to
an
get us
employee
going.
or two for us. So
I think the rub, though, is the fact that they assume, at least from my understanding, is they assume we'll continue to operate as is, and therefore allow them to disregard us or continue to disregard us and plug all that money into these new facilities. So it's kind of like a twofer for them. If they ignore us, they get the benefit of our services without the cost.
Looked at the budget.
They assume we're going to
100,000
quietly go
for
away.
furniture.
right.
And just keep
Right.
providing
Yeah,
the services.
100%.
Well-
And I don't think we need to quietly go away.
And that's where I'm at. And if you look at the quality of lunches that we provide, and they'll argue with us a little bit about this, but again, they don't have an argument. They don't compare. Meals on Wheels does not compare to our meals here at Riverdale. And the danger to that is if we continue to operate as is, how many more are we going to have come in? And that's on our dime. We're getting nothing for it. So if our numbers continue to increase, you're going to keep paying. It's going to get more expensive out there.
but it does become a little bit of a game of chicken. Like, I mean, do we start saying, hey, you know, we're not going to continue to operate? I don't think we can say that. We can't say that. And so the county knows they've got us.
We already said
They've
it.
got us. So
We
somehow,
just have to be jerks about cutting off people
Yeah.
outside of the city, and nobody wants to do that.
No. And I don't know that we want to cut them off, but I do
Correct.
think we've
mean,
got to
even
recover some of
charging
our
them
costs
more,
back, you know.
Either way, it looks so bad for us.
But it's
that
not
we
our
do
fault,
it.
and that's
Right.
where I'm at. I don't, and I think everybody, when they see the full story, they'll understand why we did it. We had no choice here. They forced our hand.
We got to make sure they see it.
Yeah.
we got to make sure the messaging gets out. Yeah.
I think the social media is a great avenue. I'd start. I absolutely would start.
Yeah.
This shouldn't even be a hard decision. To me, it's
Easy.
black and white. It's not even a close call. And ironically, I don't think Roy's even fighting that hard for it. And they have a little bit better argument. Not a little bit. They have quite a bit better argument than the Terrace would, especially arguing the addition of the west side
Yeah.
and Davis County that they're picking up. But, man, how we get left out in that mix is just mind-boggling to me. Well, we'll do that. I wanted you to know, you know, if we ruffle some feathers here, why.
Good.
This is what's
Do it.
happening. So I have no problem with that.
Okay. Well, we will go then. All right.
Okay.
Okay. We'll now move on to the action items. Number 1, council rules and procedures, resolution 2024-30. Mr. Brooks.
I didn't receive any comments from anybody. We could still make some if you felt that. These, again, as I explained last meeting, these are your council rules and procedures. Most of these are kind of clarifications as I go through, and I'll see something that jumps out at me, it doesn't make sense or it looks dumb or whatever, we could do better. Do you have any questions on any of those before I jump into the one particular one? So the one that
Mr.
I'm,
Arnold has a question.
and that's probably the one that I'm going to talk about. So.
Right. I just think they're like, what is for cause? I mean,
When that's defined in state code, and that's why we don't really need to beat it to death. The way that reads now, should we go to that, or is everybody okay with that? It says council members could be expelled by a 2/3 majority vote for acts for cause. I don't remember where I pulled that from. There is somewhere in the code that uses a 2/3 majority, but my recommendation is just to strike that part of it so that it would read council members could be expelled for cause under state code, because it's defined in there. It's already there, and most of what the code states is you're going to go through a criminal process probably, and it's going to rely upon a conviction before that would ever occur. And so that's why I don't even want the 2/3 majority in there. I think I'd have to find that. I looked all afternoon. I know I've seen that. I read it somewhere, but it could be old, and I'm just remembering it from times past. There was something in there at one point in time, and I can't find it now, so I don't really even want it in there. I'm not comfortable with it. But I can list a couple of code sections that talk about that. High crimes and misdemeanors. Malfeasance is the main one. The reason why you want something in here a little bit, I mean, it's in state code, so it's there, but there was, I don't remember if it was Salt Lake. Brandon and I were talking earlier today, South Salt Lake, or one of them, ran into this a couple of years ago where they had a council member that just decided they didn't want to come to city council meetings anymore. Ended up in a big mess. Well, they had nothing on the books or anything that they could go after him for. And so that's kind of why, I mean, it's going to be rare and unique, but it's already in state code. And so that's why I thought, if we just said you can be expelled for cause under state code, then there's nothing we have to deal with. That's a fact. That's in there now without us, dwelling on any particular code section or what the definitions are. It's already there. So that's what I would recommend we do instead of the language that I used there. And we can strike the citations too. That doesn't matter. The 10.3.826 is accurate. And I found two other ones that apply too. But rather than just list them all, I think just referring to the state code is probably the appropriate way to go on that one.
Councilor Arnold.
I think we ought to table it until we get the state code and see what the things are.
Do you want all the state codes? I mean, I've got them tonight. I can tell you
If we're
3
gonna
of them right
reference
now.
If we're going to reference them, I think we should at least read through them once.
And I'm fine with that. I don't care. Other than that one, then, do you have questions on any of the other ones? Some of them were just explanations, like when a lot of times we talk about executive sessions, and they get called closed sessions a lot of times. So I clarified that, put some definitions in there to help it, just so it reads a lot better. Conflict of interest is another one that needed to be cleaned up. Sometimes I think we don't know, and there's a little bit of conflict in the state wording in the two statutes, because it talks about, there's one section that talks about you need to declare any conflict of interest before you even start discussions, but then when the actual definition of that talks about you need to disclose it as soon as you know. Well, those two things could be different. You could be in the middle of a meeting when that dawns on you, got a conflict of interest. So you can't really hold somebody responsible to do that before the meeting if they didn't know. And so I tried to clarify that language for that reason and that example, but it still picks it up. But it's just things like that, just cleaning them up. But if that's the only one you have, I can get that clarified by next time, and we'll go with it.
I thought they were all really simple, except for the for cause thing is just a dark hole.
Well, it's defined in state code, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I still think I'd come in at the end. I mean, I can give the references in there and we can list those, but rather than just actually repeating. And I don't mind doing that either if we want. I was just trying to keep it as short as I can. Midterm vacancies, I shortened that one. That's just referring again to state code. We're just going to follow that one or its equivalent.
Didn't we talk about one time, like if you miss a council meeting without making arrangements or whatever, you don't get paid?
It's in here.
Yeah.
Is it about getting paid? You don't.
I think we put it in here. I'm not sure that it's in state code, but I think we
had
can.
it somewhere.
Yeah, we had that
I
discussion.
remember talking about that it's just, you can miss a meeting, you just
Right.
call.
Right. They have to be excused by the mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the one I probably worry about more than anything. Not with you guys, but we could run into that. There's cities that it's not a real regular occurrence, but they run into that problem, and that's what we want to avoid, that before it even gets here, so we know exactly what we can do and react. But I think these are good to have on hand. It clarifies everything that you can and can't do. And
So just to be clear, I want to make sure we have exactly what Councilor Arnold wants in the revised version. Do you want reference to the state code, but you just want him to tell us what they are?
Yeah, I mean,
Or-
even if you said for cause as in state code, blah, 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 and then
Okay.
we can go look that up. I mean,
Okay.
it doesn't have to stay it in there.
Okay.
But you do want him to
whatever.
explain that during the meeting, what those causes are, just so we all know.
and I don't mind putting it in there. Like, one of them's high crimes and misdemeanors, which we've heard about on a national level, and nobody really knows for sure what that is. So I can throw that in there, but it might just add more confusion. But I'll toy with something. We'll get it figured out.
But you mainly just wanted to say according to the state code.
Right. And if it's state code, whatever, then
Yeah.
somebody can click on it and
Okay.
Okay.
have it.
Councilor Hawes.
2 comments. The when I was looking at the reference that you highlighted, I don't find a 307.
It's wrong. That's what got me going on this whole path.
The
It's
826, it says, in
right,
case
right,
in
right.
case any municipal officer shall at any time willfully omit to perform any duty or willfully and corruptly be guilty of oppression, conduct, malfeasance, or malfeasance in office, the person is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor, shall be removed from office and is not eligible for any municipal office
Right.
thereafter. That's what that one
That's
says.
826, and that's where I didn't want to go with that, because if I start listing all those things, you're going to be more confused than we were
No.
to begin with. So
The other thing is that was G. F is the one that says that if you miss a meeting without an excuse, you can have your pay docked.
yeah, yeah.
Does that also include the strategic planning that's Saturday morning, just before Mother's Day?
Well, again,
You take your mother-in-law to breakfast.
it's without being excused. So if you call the mayor and tell him,
You call during the meeting and say, "Hey,
Or get
we're at
called.
breakfast tonight." Yeah, or get called.
I can't make
And
it.
you go, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's today?
I think, with that one, as long as it doesn't.
Well, maybe you're in this situation where I'm on these boards with council people from other cities, and I'm rather surprised, not everybody, maybe not even the majority, get paid by the meeting. Like if you have a council meeting, then you have an RDA meeting, then there's a separate, and then it rolls up rather than a flat rate per month.
We used to do that.
And which we used to do,
have
and
that,
and quite a number of cities still do that.
But we stopped doing that because we were like, oh, we want to have a special meeting based on this. Oh, it's another
Yeah.
$2,000 or
Right.
whatever. And it's just like, you know what?
Right.
Just pay it by the month.
And it was
We
the
keep
same with
having another meeting,
RDAs.
Let's just have it. And
Yep.
Well, the point of it is,
It's not fair to anybody when you're saying, oh, no, we got to have another meeting and get paid extra.
I mean, I understand the pros and cons of doing it, but I'm just wondering if it doesn't go back to the one scenario you were just talking about where the guy just stopped coming. And this is just a tool in the toolbox that can be to dealt with rather than a one-off. Anyway.
Okay. Any other comments? So, Mr. Brooks, you have your marching orders. You know what we want.
I do. Just for
We do need a
clarification, there was
motion.
more than just Alan that wanted that.
Well,
correct?
yeah. We need to have a motion to table or a motion to
Right.
approve. Is there any sort of a motion on this tonight, Councilor Arnold?
Make a motion to table until I can have more definition.
Okay. We have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
Can you be more specific on the tabling when you want it to come back?
When they bring it back, when they're, it'll be next, or it can't be next time, but the next time.
At our next meeting?
Just whenever.
By
Whenever you're ready.
mid-November,
Mid-November.
Okay.
we'll have it by then. This won't be
Sec-
hard.
Second.
Okay. We have a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Haas,
Yes.
Counselor Arnold,
Yes.
Counselor Hanson,
Yes.
Counselor Stevens,
Yes.
Counselor Richter.
Yes.
All right, very good. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to number 9, wall bridge murals. Mr. Brooks.
We were recently approached by a gentleman who expressed an interest in doing murals on different areas of the city. I think his hope was to do something nice and aesthetic rather than having the risk of graffiti. So the mayor was kind of intrigued by that. I think we are too, not knowing. I don't know a lot of cities that have done it, but it would be an interesting concept to see if it works. I don't know. I have no idea. So mayor asked me to get this on the agenda for you guys to throw out your thoughts. And again, this one I didn't give you any. I don't know what I could give you on this. It was just a verbal conversation we had with him, and we would have to work out a lot of these details. But we kind of needed to know if you're even interested in it, if that's something you want us to put some time into or not. So.
Councilor Stevens?
Just throw out one or two or three potential spots that you're thinking of placing this.
When we first talked about it, my first thought was under the bridge, right here on the river. Even though it's not real visible to the general public, it is the people that use the trail, and that's one of the targets
That's what I
that.
thought you were referring to. That bridge is owned by UDOT, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So can we do that?
we would have to have discussions with all them. That's all part of what we'd have to do on this. Same thing with any of the overpasses or anything. Most of those are going to be UDOT property, so we may not get any of that. Their attitudes towards us on the 4400 bridge has just been shocking, and that's nice artwork that they're fighting us on. So it may not even get off the ground, but at least we thought we'd come to you,
Are
see what
there
your
any-
thoughts are.
Any potential spots that are not UDOT?
Casey, you might have some better thoughts on that. Some of the
So the
high
two
target
spots we
areas.
gave him was over on 1050 by the military academy, and then under the bridge, kind of by Ken Garf. We sometimes get stuff there. You're right; they're both UDOT, and
all the overpasses are UDOT.
yeah, the overpasses are going to be UDOT. And I'm open to other suggestions. He went and looked at those, but
Water tanks. I don't know how much Sean would love that.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, South Ogden
Ogden's
up on
done it.
Harrison has their water tank. But
Yeah.
To me, that I don't like that. It's a little too
Sean.
loud.
Years ago, Sean didn't want to draw attention to the water tanks.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was what we heard anyway. Is he didn't want to draw attention to them.
I think if they were a little more visible, if that was your intent, was to put some artwork up there. Ours are kind of hard to see, and you don't know that they're even there
They no
unless you're
longer say
looking for
Riverdale
them.
City on them and stuff. He just wanted them to be kind of.
Yeah. We also have the wall up on Parker Drive. I don't know that we'd want to do that, but
probably
that
UDOT.
would be a massive canvas for somebody.
Well,
to,
you're talking about the sound barrier,
right.
and that's.
And I'm pretty
UDOT.
sure they'd tell us no on that one. I'm
UDOT,
just
yeah.
guessing, but that would be my
Well, and that could
my
get out of
thoughts.
control really quickly.
Yeah, I don't know if we would.
Whenever we get the graffiti up comes a mural, we'll just show them, hey, we're going to play this game too. So
Well, I mean, if you're going to go there, John Cypers, what's that, 1700?
Yeah.
They put up a sound wall there.
Yeah.
We could do it on the resident side.
The trail underneath the Parker Drive.
Oh yeah, that's a
Is
good
that
one.
Ogden, but maybe they'd be open to it.
Currently.
oh, down by the north
Oh, yeah, right.
trailhead.
Yeah, that
The
gets a lot of
works.
graffiti. It might be Ogden. Is it part ours?
Our camera's right there. I think it might be.
But we could work with them too. I mean, if that's
Yeah.
one you want to look at, that does get nailed quite a bit. That
Right
tunnel
under
underneath
Parker.
that
That's
road.
a really good
I don't think
suggestion.
Ogden would care. So, but that's the train because we had the vagrant that we were up there just last week. That there's a bunch of graffiti on that, but that would be owned by the train people. Did you want to?
Come on up, Chief. Yeah.
My opinion is I think it'd be a great idea if we could get UDOT on board, as long as the murals are tailored towards the heritage of Riverdale City. So it'd have to be something that you guys approve that has to do with the history of the city, whatever it may be. And each bridge could have its own theme, but it has a meaning to it. It's just not a cool picture. It has a meaning to Riverdale and its residents. I think if you did that, and they were willing to kind of upkeep if we did get something on there, I think it would be a great benefit to the citizens. It would make the community look nice, and it would have something custom to our city. So
Awesome.
that would be my recommendation if we move forward with it, that would be part of the decision making, is that it has to be something that's special to the community, whether it be heritage, whatever.
It obviously has to be approved too.
Yes, through you guys.
Like through-
I would
through-
say
through
you
you
guys
guys, yeah.
would be the board or someone like that, maybe whoever. But you look at it and say, okay, here's 3 renditions of what we could do. And here's the meaning behind these renditions for Riverdale City. And then you'd say, oh, you know what? That would be great. I like rendition 2. And then we have some control over it. It's not just some random thing where, wait, we want to have this political view on the wall.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be mixed politics. It should just be something special to Riverdale and its history. So
Councilor Arnold, you had a comment?
I was just thinking Cammy could be involved as well.
Yeah. I agree.
I just by way of comment, I think probably the way it would be better to operate, how we would normally do that, is you give us the criteria. You do the legislative part of this, say this is what we want, and then we would set up an administrative committee rather than burden you guys with just following the criteria you gave us. Unless you want that, it's just more work that we'd have to bring into a city council meeting, where we could speed it probably faster by doing it through the administrative process rather than legislative.
If I can add to that, Mayor, there is a typical process for this that the art community is used to. It involves a call for art, so it would be a standardized RFP, if you would, but it's a call for art. And so the call for art would be scoped appropriately. So it would provide a location, it would provide a topic potentially, or a range of topics. It would provide a budget. It could specify materials used. If it's just a mural, it could specify all kinds of things that you all could help us scope. And then administratively, as Steve said, we could just put that out to the public. We'd get responses, and then a panel would review those responses based on the criteria and bring 1 as a final recommendation, 3 as a final recommendation and a choice. So that's a typical process that the art community is used to engaging in from a city, and I think that would yield really positive results.
Okay. Is that what you guys want to pursue, is something like that, maybe? And we can work on some sort of we'll have to get some guidelines as far as budget, which might be 0, materials.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to talk to UDOT first. That might put an
Yeah.
end to it really fast right there. So.
But I think that trail on the tunnel is a great one too.
Yeah, that's a possibility without their okay. Even.
Okay, so what do we need to do right now?
Just kind of a consensus. If that's the direction, I've got 3 of you saying we'll pursue it further.
UDOT and just kind of keep moving forward on this. Okay, I'll let him know this guy, but I think opening it probably protects us from any sort of favoritism or anything like that. So. Okay.
One thing being said, I did request UDOT that they paint all of the sidewalk the same color, so this might be a good alternative to them.
Okay.
So I've already been putting pressure on them for that.
Yeah. Good. Okay. All right. Item number 10, signs. Mr. Brooks.
All right. As I mentioned in a planning meeting, really the purpose of this is I just want to know where you guys are at. I think it is good for us to be able to promote our own events, whether it's the farmers market or the fire open house or Rich's Rec programs. But as it stands right now, our code in dealing with signs doesn't allow that even on city property. There's no, if it's a city event, you have that exception kind of thing. I don't know where you're at. I'm okay with it, but as it reads right now, it's not okay. And so that was my one concern. Do you want that? We can make that exception in there. And then secondly, how hard do you want us to push UDOT on some of those areas that are in our city? It would be a violation of our code, but it's not our property. And do you want us to pursue that and try to put more heat on them to get them to enforce that, or do we care? It's kind of where I'm at. So as it stands right now, I don't know if you've seen, I'm sure you've seen, but there was a lost dog here not too long ago, and we got plastered. All those are a violation of our code. There's a code section in it that specifically says that our signs, our fences, street light poles, all that's a violation. So every one of those are a violation, and it's kind of like, I'm telling Casey, you got to get those pulled down, and we're uncomfortable because somebody obviously cares deeply about this dog, and I'm not saying that's not important, but if we start allowing that to happen, then we got a mess. And Riverdale's really good about that. We're one of the few cities that we do crack down on that. And it's not uncommon for Steve, our code enforcement guy, to go out and pick up all those signs. And we actively pursue that. And that helps keep our city clean and uncluttered. And I think that's important. But I just need some direction in those 2 areas. Do you want me to put some heat on UDOT? And do you want to make an exception for city functions or city
Councilor
events?
Hawes.
As far as UDOT, when we approach them, could we approach them with the option that we would enforce our things even on their property?
Yeah.
I mean,
Let me tell you, I've thought about that exact thing, because in the state code, you can get in trouble if you take a sign down. Even though it's against the code, you can't take it down unless you're part of that. But I think they could give us permission on that, and then I'd feel a little more comfortable with that. But I still got to talk to them,
Right.
because they may say no. I don't know. Because when Steve gets up on that roundabout there on 4400, they've got to get up. You're not just reaching those from the ground. Some of them are pretty high. And they may be a little bit nervous about us doing that, but I would certainly approach them if that's what you wanted me to do. That would be better for us, I think. We could get it done faster. Otherwise, if we wait for them, we've seen how long did it take on our graffiti down there. I mean, that took weeks. So that's not going to happen fast if we go through that channel, even with us asking and pushing it. So I agree, and I think that would be a good option for us. But we can certainly ask. I don't have a problem doing that.
I remember when I was on the council before, Randy was constantly complaining about going out. I mean, he was. I guess it wasn't complaining. It was the fact that he did it so often.
Right.
He was constantly going through the city pulling down signs, most of them off of the light poles, and power poles, and just constantly out there.
Yeah.
And it was nice. I mean, I like the fact that there aren't a lot of signs up, and it does make the city look a lot better.
Yeah. Ironically, and this is what you'll find, the week that all those came up, and you started seeing them everywhere, especially at 4400, up and down there. And they're, the aerations or whatever they were, it's whenever we start letting some, then they get multiplying. And that's why we got to stay on top of that.
So we have Counselor Hanson, then Counselor Richter, then Counselor Stevens.
Well, I was just thinking that one of those areas on 4400 by the roundabout, frequently I think we do put recreation signs, but I think it's state property right there because it's used during the elections pretty commonly too. So that would kind of put the kibosh on the city putting something there, right, by the roundabout.
If it's,
Do we care? I just wanted to bring it up in case that's a concern because
yeah, well, I mean, basically how it reads is our code, to make it real simple, is there's nothing on city property or any private property without the landowner's permission. So if that was on state property, then we'd have to get permission from the state, and they require a permit too. And I don't know what that would take. You might be talking years to get that permit. I don't know.
It's a permanent sign the city has up there. It's one of the metal posts that they add the signs to.
But metal posts, fences, all that's it's not allowed under our code. Tape with this one here, every one of those poles are now marked, like permanently marked. We'd have to be out there with a razor blade to get that stuff off.
I'm just saying that, like, we can make the exception for city on city property, which would be
Right.
great. I think we should
Right.
do that. But then that doesn't address the issue with that area where it's technically.
And I don't know that I wouldn't recommend that. I would just do it on our property because there were places that we could do that, like even here in front of our building, in front of their building, things like that. I'm okay with putting it on our property if we made the exception.
Okay.
But I don't know that I'd go into the other ones because then they're going to use that as an excuse and we would have to get permission and all that stuff. And I don't know that I even want to go there because other people think that it's on the up and up if the city is doing it. So.
Well, and if we ask the city to do this just for us in general, I mean, most of us put our signs along state property right there. So we're kind of handicapping ourselves too. Just a thought.
And that's why I brought it up. It wasn't an election year. I figured we'd
Yeah.
get some honest opinions here. So you got to decide. Next year might be a little different. So, and I don't care. I really don't care. We can keep doing it, but we're going to follow what the code says unless you tell me something different.
And I think it needs to be very clear as we do go into an election year next year. Because we're talking about the roundabout, but really all the way along Parker, I think. Is
Yeah.
Kind of, I know Jill Colford and Rosemary Lesser have signs.
They've
all
got some
along
big ones there. It would be interesting to see what the state says to us because I would dare to guess that they'll say, hey, if you'll enforce that, we'll give you full permission. That would be my guess on that whole strip because that's huge for them. And they just don't have the manpower. I mean, think about that. Every overpass in the state, which is somewhat ironic that it's illegal to do that, and yet all the people that are running for state offices are putting them right there where it's illegal.
Okay. Councilor Richter.
Well, first off, just a compliment to the city on this. I like that when I've seen this, you reach out to the people. There's a phone number on the sign. Reach out. Hey, you got a sign here that's not appropriate. Give them an opportunity to pull it down. Because I suspect most people that do that have no idea that they're violating. They're just looking for their dog, right?
Right.
So compliments on that. And then, of course, obviously the cleanup. But on the other, as far as city property, I think the city should be able to use some elements of that. I would designate very specific areas that would make sense, and I'm open to that. Say, yeah, in this area, A, B, C, and D, rather than just say city property is okay for city events. I would say if we designate unique areas, specific areas, I'm supportive there.
Well, my thought on that was just leave that again up to community development director, who would give out other permits otherwise. So just leave that discretion up to him, and he would know which ones we could use and couldn't use, and we were just consistent with it. Because we kind of use the same ones all the time anyway, just some key points, but
Like our farmers market, we want to be able to promote that, and stuff like that, plus our sports and stuff, and the CTC marathon and stuff. Councilor Stevens.
Okay, you just brought up this, on the corner, the roundabout at 4400, excuse me, in Parker. Sorry. It used to be, we put the little yard signs over in the northwest corner. But this year, this is the first time I've seen them put on the fence, and I think it started, in my opinion, started with the farmer's market sign. Yeah. And there's also another sign there of the help wanted for AmeriCorps Senior, which is essentially for hire type. And so it's like, okay, this is, and then of course all the political signs, and these are not yard signs. These are the big 2 foot by 3 foot or 4 foot by 8 foot, and you can say the same thing about going up 300, where on the one side where the golf course is, where that fence is, and I don't know who owns that, if that's Riverdale property or if that is Country Club property, but and those are big signs. Again, you're talking about 4 feet by 8 feet. And it's just like, these aren't just little yard signs like typically we do in our puny little budgets. But it's clearly, in my perspective, the farmer's market sign, and then which opened up that fence line on that south side.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilor Arnold.
I'm equally conflicted either way, because I think the freedom of speech, the being able to get your signs out and all that kind of stuff is very important. But on the other side of that, I think the city should look good. I don't like the idea of Riverdale enforcing things on state property and that kind of thing. I don't think we should get into that. We've got our own budget issues, and to have people, I don't know who's gonna, Casey, if you're gonna be like, hey, I'm the sign guy, and it's like whoever's got the truck or something like that. It's just bad form, because people put up signs and then they come up missing, and it's really frustrating when you're doing that. I think all of us have had that happen, and it's like, so like I said, I'm 50-50, and I would argue both ways. And against both ways, too.
well, traditionally we haven't disposed of signs. We reach out to them and give them the chance to come pick them up. And that's state policy as well. They have a storage yard, but they'll charge you a fee for it.
Yeah, but if you look at state property, Riverdale property, that's the majority of the roadways.
I agree. But it's still within the city, and if that's what your code says, I think we need to at least reach out to them, if nothing else, and say, hey, these guys are all in violation of our code.
Isn't our code though just Riverdale City property? Because when we put up signs,
Right,
it's just
but
Riverdale City property.
The whole city. I mean, the if you take this down, it's they still have to have permission to put that anywhere in the city, if it's not their property, and none of that is. So they're still in violation of our code by putting them on even the state property.
Come on up.
So if you're moving towards state property enforcing signs there, a lot of times when we go to, like, let's say Walmart with camping or trespassing or loitering, we have what's called a letter of agency that the owners or the managers of the business sign that basically gives us the right to go over and enforce certain things on their property. If you were going to move down the roadway of us enforcing the state stuff, what I would recommend is that we get a letter of agency from UDOT that basically says during these times, outside of political things or whatever, that they want us to basically enforce our ordinance because they don't have permission to put the signs on state property. If you were going to go that route, that way we have something in writing We don't have to go back to them every single time. We can contact the person. You don't have permission from UDOT. I'm sorry. Under our ordinance, this letter of agency, you're going to have to remove the sign. We never cite people. It's always lowest level. We try to contact them. If we end up taking the sign, it goes into our property. And after, just like any other piece of property that's abandoned, it stays there for a certain amount of time before it's destroyed. But that's even if you want to go down that road. But the letter of agency would make it so we're covered, I believe.
So how many cities are there in Riverdale? Or not Riverdale, one, in the state? Because if Riverdale does it and nobody else does it, I think we'll get sued.
Yeah, and that's some research we could do. Maybe other cities have that in place. Maybe they don't before we make a decision.
I mean, I just think political season, we get there. It's something we live with.
I don't know that we could get sued because if it's a code, it's a code, and it's both a state and a city code. But
This is state.
what that one's going to tell you is, if it's the one I recall,
Official removes sign in accordance with official duty of the public official is not guilty of a misdemeanor if they remove a sign.
right? And it doesn't list that as a state official or a thing. The other thing that they state in there is the biggest thing about that is you can't discriminate. So you can't say, Republicans can put them up, but Democrats can't. That's the one thing the state has that says you got to be careful with.
103, yep, right there.
So yeah, I don't think we get sued. It's just a matter of whether or not we want to do it. My thought is, and I don't know, I'm speculating here, but I would think that UDOT would love that if cities did that because they don't have the people to do it. There's just no way. And that's why you see what you see on state property. I don't know. Sixes to me, one way or another, but I do like the fact that Riverdale's quite clean compared to a lot of cities. I do like that.
Might as well run the senior center for the county. We'll clean up the signs for the state and senior center for the county.
Outside of the political signs, I would strongly suggest that we do have a letter of agency for at least advertising, because as we come up off I-84, I-15, that gets plastered with all kinds of
Over by Carl's Jr.
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff, and we're dealing with it all the time. And we call them, contact them. But I think at a bare minimum, at least things that are not political, we need to address.
It'll get out of hand.
Yeah. There was a farmer's market sign for a lot of the early summer for West Point or somewhere up there, right behind Carl's Jr. It wasn't our city.
Yes.
We were advertising for somebody else's farmer's market. Again,
One more thought too, sorry, apologize, because we've been dealing with signs all year. I mean, Steve's probably removed several hundred since he's been here. And some of the other signs that we get on Riverdale Road, again, state property. But it's not fair to our retailers who invest all this money to come to Riverdale to set up shop, have a business here, and then someone goes and puts a sign out in front of their property that's maybe their competitor or different things like that. And so we do experience that as well. And so that's another tool that we have to say, okay, these businesses have invested in Riverdale. We need to kind of protect their interests and not let any Joe Schmo just come post a sign on state property, but in front of their business, when I just don't think that's fair, right?
Well, couldn't we just say we want to enforce it for non-political signs? And then we just deal with the consequences of the political signs? But then you can still take down like the aid, whatever those other signs were that shouldn't have been up there anyway. I mean, none of them should, but like you're saying,
It stretches just far beyond the political signs. If we didn't deal with signs on UDOT's property, we'd have signs everywhere.
because there is commonly an exception for that. Plus, isn't there like a really limited time period you can have your signs out anyway, and they have to be
on the
cleaned
political
up.
signs.
And then you're in violation no matter what, right?
Yeah, that was one of the reasons we made the change back in 2015. That was the state statute that they changed because we had specific timeframes listed in our code, and the state came in and said you can't do that anymore.
Oh.
See, basically, you did it for if you were in a primary, you had then you had to pull your signs.
Right.
And so then you had to put them back out for the general.
So the state statute, it doesn't have one with an end date anymore where you have to remove it? Isn't it just the election?
I think they list like 30 days after, if I recall correctly, 30 days after the final election, you have to take them down or you risk a penalty or a fine or something.
But I don't know if there's a limit on the front end anymore. Like I think
Right.
you can put them up anytime where we
Right.
used to have limits.
But I still
Call
think
Michelle
it's,
and say,
they have
when
to
is
get
it?
permission still to put them on state property, and nobody does that. And we have other sign regulations for businesses that help us out a little bit. Even some of those, I don't know how closely they're followed, because I think there's one like with the banners and stuff, anything that's pushed by wind or distracts or something like that, they're still supposed to come in and get a permit from Brandon. I don't know that we've ever done one of those that I recall. So we haven't been completely hardcore on some of that stuff, especially with our local businesses. Sometimes we will, if it's something that's really distracting or blocks or anything like that, we'll say something, get them to pull it back or whatever. But we don't generally take them or be really hardcore with them. It's the ones that's the outside businesses. And those are the ones that get messy and junky. The definition is sniper signs is primarily the ones we see. I don't know where that came from, but it's written in the code that way.
UDOT's intentions might be kind of evident here in 2A and B. So I'd like to research this a little bit more and call UDOT. And if someone knows the answer to this now, that'd be nice. But basically, 2 says a local government entity, aka UDOT, that permits a person to post a political sign on public property shall do so in A. To the same requirements and restrictions. Well, we already know that UDOT doesn't allow political signs or signs of any kinds on pedestrian overpasses or other types of things that span their UDOT roadways. And so if they're enforcing that, then by virtue of this code, they would need to impose those same restrictions on all of their property, which means that it seems like, from my understanding, that would be UDOT's intention. Now, the enforcement of it practically is who's doing it. So at the local level, we now have an opportunity to verify that, if that's truly the case. And if it is, then decide if that's a task we want to take upon ourselves.
Elder Smith so-and-so's. Family's gonna be in
Sorry.
trouble.
Hypothetically, we do enforce, this is a state law. We enforce criminal mischief on their property. We enforce any state law on their property. And so I do believe that the state law does come down to the local law enforcement agencies to have the ability to enforce those laws where it is a state law, right? It doesn't say that UDOT has to enforce it. It's from the code, it's within our jurisdiction. Now we can use our discretion, which I'm okay with too. I'm like Steve. We're 6s, but we just need to have some direction on what's the best route of doing it.
Have Steve collect them all. Steve may collect them all.
We have a lot of state property in our city.
Yeah, we do. A lot more than
than
anyone else for the
anybody
size we
else.
are.
Yeah. So you're looking for some direction from the council on where to head.
Yeah, I mean, and I have no problem if you want to table this, give us some time to talk to UDOT, because they may tell us no. And that eliminates that one question. I gathered you're okay with me making an exception for our stuff, though, at least on our property. Is that a fair assumption there? So that part we can do. If you want to table it again, give me till the middle of November. We'll see if we can't get something from UDOT, and then you can make a decision what you want to do.
Huh. That's interesting.
This article says that UDOT doesn't allow it, but they're not gonna take the time to go take them down unless it's causing a safety issue. If it's blocking a line of sight.
They just
they're gonna
can't.
take
I
it
mean,
down.
think of all the signs in the state that they would have to regulate.
Councilor Arnold and then Councilor Hawes. Oh, you're first. My eyes saw you first because like
Make
the
a
light
motion
traveled
to-
to my
Make
eye.
a motion to table it until the middle of November.
You're okay with that? So we have a motion to table until the middle of November, till after the elections. Smart move.
Second.
And a second on that. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragona, will you poll the council on that motion?
Counselor Stevens,
Yes.
Counselor Hanson,
Yes.
Arnold, Director.
It's interesting, huh?
Yes. It passes unanimously. The item is tabled until the middle of November. We'll now move on to item number 11, consideration to adjourn into a closed session pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-205A, C, and D to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation, the purchase of real property, and personnel. So we have a motion to go.
So moved as stated within the packet.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Counselor Hawes, you look like you want to say something. Do we have?
They go to the bathroom.
Okay, so we will.
If you could just say, a break, and then we'll go in.
Let's take a short break.
Before we vote?
Before we vote.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to take a break before we vote. Yeah, then we can focus on our vote.
We'll keep the recording going until then.
Well, I guess we could leave during closed session. Can we leave during a closed session? Go out?
We could. It's not going to be that long, I don't think. I'd take your break now.
Yeah. But do we need to finish our motion and
Go,
voting?
Stacy, go.
On
He abstains.
what
which
did we
is a no.
finish the table?
He wants to go to the bathroom
We're
before
taking
the
a quick
table?
break.
before the motion.
Actually, it's kind of dumb to start it again, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, I should have finished that. You're right.
That's all right.
Now I understand why that was beneficial. Is it going? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Hanson,
Yes.
Counselor Stevens,
Yes.
Counselor Hawes,
Yes.
Counselor Arnold,
Abstain. Yes.
Counselor Richter.
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously, and so we are going into closed session. Okay, turn your mics off.